nothing in one. You will not cut.
Yep.
Okay.
No, we won't cut.
Yeah.
Can we, as we're keeping this quite a long way away, can we have a reasonable amount of voice?
Yes.
From both of you?
Right.
Can we go straight away if you're happy?
Yes, very. Thank you.
The only thing I can say to you is it's all going to go eventually onto film, so if afterwards there's something that you've, rather than stopping, if there's something that you've said, I'll happily cut it down.
No, I wouldn't stop. I'll just remember. Thank you.
Go on.
Yes, just going to through that.
I saw Grand Hotel for the first time about a month ago.
Oh, did you?
Oh, fantastic. 10 seconds from now. Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Has been, go on. Sorry, thank you.
I don't know how you feel about it. It always worries me a little bit, the smoking. It's only one gets smoke across the face.
Bless
Silver.
you. Bless you. Thank you. Yes, I will.
Right, so this time 10 seconds.
Miss Crawford, how much did your rather fraught childhood re-emerge in your playing of emotionally disturbed women?
Well, I think I still use certain qualities of it and certain phases of it. It's very helpful to me.
Do you find, for instance, that some of the hardship that you went through as a child strikes chords, brings memories to you when you're actually formulating a characterization, a part?
What makes you think there aren't hardships when you're grown up?
The first job I had when I left school was a theatre projectionist, and I saw your film Sudden Fear 4 times a day for 7 days, so I had a very good chance to analyze your performance. And it seemed to me the outstanding thing about you was that you believed in it so much, and you were positively willing the audience to believe in it too. And this is a quality I've noticed come out many, many times. Do you agree with this?
Well, I think I believed in that so tremendously because it was my first, as we call it, my first baby. It was my first independent production. But actually, I don't think anybody starts out to make a bad film. We all hope that each one will be good or even great. But that one I particularly adored. And thank you. I'm sorry you had to look at it so many times.
Oh, it was a great pleasure. Was there one particular moment in your career where you suddenly said to yourself, golly, I'm a star?
No. There are many times when I say, golly, I was just lousy in that. I wish I could do the whole thing over again. I'll never be a star until I can do better.
How easily or difficult do you find the burden of being a star?
Sometimes it's easy to get there, but it's very difficult to stay there. And if you call me durable, like all the English people do, I'll leave the studio.
Do you find it difficult, though, certainly outside the studios? Obviously, you are now such a worldwide name. You're so immediately recognizable. So many people, obviously, love you and love your work. Do you find it sort of difficult, as it were, maintaining the star exterior when perhaps you're tired or you're a bit depressed? Or
No, I think my training in pictures has been so great, and my growing up in front of a camera. Well, when you're in your teens and you grow up with an industry and you grow with it, which I hope I've done, I think the discipline takes care of all that. And you kind of gear yourself that no matter how tired you are or how many scenes you have to do or how many hours you have to work, you can make it.
You tend to play career women in a lot of your films, and of course you're a very celebrated businesswoman in real life, and yet I see you as essentially a very feminine person. How have you reconciled these two opposites?
Well, you know something, I played career women long before I was a member of the board of that, you know. I know I'm not allowed to say it. The image will take care of itself. But I played the career women long before that. That owner of the truck drivers, you remember? That I hope we show a little bit later. I think that helped me to be a good businesswoman. You see, pictures have given me all the education I ever had since I never went beyond the 5th grade. No formal education whatsoever. And I used to have to read scripts and then look up the words in the dictionary, how to pronounce them and what they meant before I could learn the lines. And that's good, too.
And yet you haven't, it seems to me, ever, in all your various playing of these career women, being an expert businesswoman, you're still such a complete woman, so very, very feminine. Have you never found yourself thinking, watch it, you're getting tough, watch it, you're getting hard?
No. I saved that for the screen, I'm sorry. I was born a woman, and I hope I will always remain one, and I think women are here to stay. I'd like to be part of that group.
What have been the hardest and nicest things that being rich has taught you?
I think rich in wisdom, and I can speak that way because I'm not rich financially. Somebody has said recently to me, why is Joan Crawford over here to do a picture in England and a picture in Spain immediately following? Why when she's so rich? And I hope I'm rich in the desire to give. What small talent I have, I would like to share it, and that's just the way I feel.
You've played in some pretty scaring pictures, and indeed you've played everything, I think, from psychopaths to murderesses. Have you ever found yourself being a little frightened by your own intensity?
To answer your first question, I've played, it wasn't a question really, it was a statement, that I played in as murderesses and so many mystery pictures. Obviously you've forgotten a few comedies I did.
Oh sure, great comedies, yes.
Like Susan and God and a few others.
Right.
The great George Cukor. And no, I harness that intensity, and I hold it until it's ready to go for the camera.
I've heard, I don't know whether this is true, that when you look at yourself on the screen, you've been heard to remark, oh, she's good there, or oh dear, why did she wear that dress? In other words, it's a very different person up there on the screen, and you can achieve complete objectivity. Is this true?
I use my body, my face, to project, and my walk, my mannerisms, to project what the character is, whether it be a Monica in the last picture, or a Martha in the next one, or a Helen, or whatever she is. I use this for projection only. And I get very cross when I see Joan Crawford doing something that a Monica would not have done, that it's a Joan Crawford thing instead of a Monica.
Do you have a personal maid and a chauffeur, or are you jealous of your independence and privacy?
I have a chauffeur here in London. I do not in New York, because I travel so much that it's useless to have a car there. I just hire one whenever I need it. But I travel about 100,000 miles a year or more, and a personal maid I do have. And I have an 8-room flat in New York, which is quite large, and my personal maid and I take care of it completely and do all the packing, and I do all the cooking. I haven't had a cook for 11 years.
A short while ago, you gave quite a long press conference, and I wonder, does sometimes facing prying or unfair questions bother you? Is it an ordeal?
It's not an ordeal. It's become now rather comic because everyone in England says, how old are you and how much money do you have? And how many times have you been married? So I expect it and I'm ready for it. But there are other countries you go to that they don't, can you say give a damn? How old you are and how much money you have. They like you for what you are. And the power of motion pictures is so tremendous that no matter what country you go to, they know you. You've lost you don't have to go through that sound, the language barrier. They know you from the screen. And it's wonderful.
I'm sure you must get very bored by the constant fiction that you and Bette Davis are positively daggers
She'd
drawn.
kill you if she heard you say Bet. Her name is Betty, she will say.
I'm sorry. It's an anglicisation of her name, I think.
I know.
Funnily enough, on this subject, I've always thought that Barbara Stanwyck was probably your closest match on the screen. Have you felt this?
Well, actually, I have tremendous respect for both actresses. I enjoyed doing Baby Jane so much, and she's a fascinating actress, Bette Davis. I've never had time to be friends with her because we only did the one picture, but Barbara Stanwyck and I are very close. She's one of my warmest, dearest friends, and I'm delighted that you think we are a match on the screen.
Can I ask you, it seemed to me that in the film Possessed, one of the greatest moments in that was when you finally shot Van Heflin. It was an extremely emotion-packed scene. Was this a scene that was very difficult to create, or did it come fairly easily?
No scenes come easily. You have to probe into the character and dig and find facets, avenues for hatred, avenues for love. But they must all belong to that one character, and as you know, in that picture, it was a difficult character. And I hated to shoot him because I really like him so much as a person.
And Anne Blythe in Mildred Pierce gave you a few very nasty, stormy moments where she tells you that she's going to leave you, you're not good enough for her anymore, and you have this tremendous confrontation on the stairs. Did you like her? Well, obviously you must have done, I'm sure you did. But how difficult was it for you both to generate such hatred in that moment?
Actually, when I had to slap her, and I waited and waited, the director didn't say cut because he saw me sobbing so much. And I put my arms around her and I said, darling, did I hurt you? That's all I could say.
In Sudden Fear, which is one of my favourite movies of yours, there's a terrifying moment where you're hiding from Jack Palance, who by this time the cards are down. He's a murderer, you know this, and you're hiding from him in this flat in a little wardrobe, a little closet, and he's put a little clockwork toy on the floor, and it heads right in your direction as you hide, palpitating in the shadows. Was this a long scene to set up? It seemed to me to have a very difficult setup from both a lighting point of view and also from your facial expression.
I think, actually, we took 2.5 days to shoot all the scenes in the wardrobe, we call it a closet. With that one light, there was no ceiling in the set. The door was open, as you know, this much, and only one baby spot was on. And I would move into it and out of it, but it took an awful long time, and I had to hold that whole suspenseful thing throughout 9 weeks of shooting and build up, because we shoot out of continuity so much that you never know what day, but in that sequence we did shoot in continuity.
In Humoresque, I remember particularly the party sequence where you've invited John Garfield, who I thought played a tremendous part opposite you. You invited him to your very rich flat, and he's played, or about to play, his violin for you and your guests, and you first walk over and meet him, and there's a tremendously written dialogue sequence between you and him, and it seems to me the sparks positively fly off the words. Did you enjoy that script?
I think I love that almost as much as any film I've ever made. As a matter of fact, when we were rehearsing it, I said I would like to imitate Tallulah Bankhead in this scene. I've seen Tallulah many times at big parties, And she picks up a cigarette, and 5 lights come in. Men who light her cigarette. And she can only take 1 or 2 cigarettes, the lights, I mean. And we imitated that, and it came off very well. Johnny was one of the most exciting young men to work with that I've ever worked with, except Gable. But Johnny, I think, was next.
One other sequence I must ask you about, which is the dead rat sequence in Baby Jane, which I think, perhaps as much, if not more than Psycho, really frightened me half to death. How scared were you on that moment when you lifted up the tureen cover?
More frightened than you, really, because I refused to work with anything but an empty plate. And when I knew the cameras were ready, then I said, you may bring it on. And something went wrong, technically, with the camera, and I said, don't take the lid off. Leave it. Just take it away. And I still kept the emotion and ready for it. And when the technicality was, when the technical things were fixed on the camera and the lights, then we went in, and I was still ready, and away we went. Take 1. But I think if you rehearse too much with the actual rodent, I almost said animal, it looks so big, but it is a rodent, I believe, the rats. Yes. And of course the dead bird too.
Yes.
It's just awful. But it's wonderful to do those scenes. You want to bring the audience in with you, so close to you. You want to put them in your lap, in the palm of your hand. And it's very exciting when you go to the theater and found that you've done it in a couple of scenes. It makes it all worthwhile, the long hours and the tedious work and study. And I worked in the wheelchair. As a matter of fact, I took the wheelchair home with me at nights to learn how to get through doors. And then I worked on the sets on all weekends because I had an inch on either side. And with your hands there on the wheelchair, if they were too far out, I had very sore knuckles the first 2 or 3 days I rehearsed.
Yes.
But it's wonderful to be a perfectionist, or to want to be.
On this thing of perfection, I get the greatest pleasure, I must confess, from watching films of the 30s, where it seems to me that they were at their peak. And I think of stars like Carole Lombard and Gable. And I wonder, how do you compare, and how do you think these stars rate up against the actors of today, people like Natalie Wood, Warren Beatty? Do you think they have, really there is an unbroken line between these stars? Or is it very different?
Well, you named 2 people. If you had just asked me the question of the stars of today, you see, we were trained with a stable of stars. When I was growing up and in my teens, I used to sneak over from my set when I was playing an extra or a small bit part, and sneak over and watch the Lewis Stones, Wally Beery, Greta Garbo, 3 Barrymores. 1 Barrymore is pretty powerful, but 3, 3, oh boy. And the Boleslavskys, the directors, the Stanislavski method he was trained with. And they don't have that anymore, the studios. They don't take the time to train the stars. They don't have that many under contract. I think Natalie Wood has great talent, great potential. I don't think they've touched her talent yet. Why did you mention Warren Beatty, for instance?
It seemed to me that he has very much it's a horrid phrase, but the current image. He has the demeanor, the expression, the looks of the 1966 young man. Whether or not...
What, you mean the surly one?
Yes, it seems to me that he has all the ingredients required by movie makers of the 60s. And I wondered whether, perhaps like me, you think, or are doubtful whether they might conceivably have the lasting power, the staying power that some of the 30s...
64 was the angry young men, now it's the surly ones. I still think we should go back to romantic pictures. The world is so angry. I'm no Cinderella, but by golly, the world is so angry that if we could get romantic pictures back again, and no angry young men, and have the young men have their hair cut, and the young ladies let it grow, I think we'd get back to a nice human relationship again throughout the world.
On romanticism, you have said, I play love scenes in films that elude me in reality. Do you think of yourself essentially as a romantic, or are you really more of a realist?
It's according to what the situation is.
Yes.
But a romanticist I am.
Yes. Yes. I think that comes out in your films. What finally made you part company with Metro after a long run, nearly 20 years?
17 years and 2 lousy pictures, and I asked for my release.
Do you think the independent producer of today is in a better position to acquire talent than the front office system of the 30s and early 40s?
Oh, yes. Very much so.
When you meet directors like John Negulesco, who you've often worked with, all of what, I suppose 15 years ago now, is it a great reunion, or do you find it difficult to bridge the gap of all those years?
I think if you really feel friendship and have warmth and have a feeling of giving and loving, Joan and I exchanged Christmas cards and Easter cards and Thanksgiving cards and birthday cards, and throughout the years, and always will. You pick it up where you left it. The years don't matter. You just say, "Hi, darling. Let's go."
What is your feeling about a star like Elizabeth Taylor, who started as, well, literally as a teenager in films, and it seems to me now is certainly emerging as a very important actress? And she, as it were, has lived through a whole period in Hollywood, the romantic period right the way through to Virginia Woolf, which is just about as hard-hitting and as kitchen sink as you're likely ever to get. Are you glad that you and stars like Elizabeth Taylor have had the opportunity to work through this period, this fantastic period of transition?
We were both born at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. I, long before Miss Taylor, of course. I have been known to criticize Miss Taylor on occasion for her personal life. That's none of my business. I never should have done it. This girl, I think, has developed into one of the finest actresses on the screen that I've ever seen. And, of course, she's had a good tutor, Mr. Burton. And they've helped each other tremendously.
When you made Daisy Kenyon in 1947, I think it was, for Fox, it was almost 2 years, was it not, before you made another movie, Flamingo Road. Did you find this period a drag? Did you find it was boring and you longed to get back to work, or do you not easily get bored?
I can't stand not working. I must be active. I'm so grateful for activity. The only reason I had 2 years without activity was I didn't like the scripts they gave me.
In your book, you constantly say how overawed you were when you met stars like Garbo and Barrymore.
Have you ever met her?
No.
Oh, you'd be breathless.
Really?
Oh, you couldn't stand it. She's so beautiful.
Yes.
She's so wonderful. And that's what was so great during the Metro days, because they had a mystery about everyone. There were no girls next door, you know, with the shiny faces. We had glamour. We were dressed by Adrienne or Irene or Jean-Louis or the great ones, Helen Rose. And they were all at Metro. Edith Head is at Paramount, and I'm longing to work with her, but everybody knows too much about stars nowadays. And not enough about what our real beliefs are. But dreadful pictures in the newspapers, you know, when we're caught off guard, what they call candid cameras, which are horrible. There's no more glamour. There should be a protectivity. We protect our families. We don't go out on the street or on radio or television and say, one of my daughters is this, one of my daughters is that, and what a problem I'm having. Who cares? We know we all have problems. But who cares except us? And why put it in somebody else's lap?
I felt this very much myself. I couldn't agree more with what you say. And I felt the low watermark came at that sort of ghastly period in Hollywood with magazines, Confidential and so on and so forth, where the whole thing finally blew up to such a stage that, you know, one hardly dare open these magazines for fear of what one was going to read next. And I think more illusions crashed to the ground during that period than ever before.
I was threatened by Confidential magazine and by the man who finally killed himself in a taxi, I believe. Didn't he? The late Mike Connolly called me and he said Confidential magazine is going to print an article about you because you're having a problem with your daughter. And I said, he has 3 daughters, doesn't he? And they said, yes. And I said, Mike, bring him over. And the minute he walked in, I said, how old are your daughters? And he told me, and I said, any problems? He said, oh, my goodness, so many problems with them and their teenagers. As one is 18, one is 15, one is 13. And I said, would you like me to print it? He said they wouldn't be interested in me, but they're interested in your problems. So, what can you do about it?
Would you now like to just take a quick look at a movie annual, which I have here, and in the top corner there, I think you'll see that there's an article about you and what you eat for your breakfast and for your lunch and your tea. Looking at yourself in that book, is it the same Joan Crawford as the Joan Crawford of today, or again, how are you able to detach yourself?
Completely detached myself. That was yesterday.
Yes.
I never look in the past, only to the future.
How amused were you, though, when those sort of little books and magazines came out and you read these curious things about yourself? I mean, it gives you a full diet for the day. You know, what you had for your breakfast, for your lunch and your dinner, and how much you weighed. And
well, at that time, I probably did weigh that much. And I weigh less now and eat less.
Fine, thank you. Another quote, I'm afraid. The story of my life is a search for security. There was none in my childhood and none in love, you've said. Do you feel that this kind of insecurity is a widespread human condition, or is it something perhaps that is personal to you?
You sure I said none in love?
Perhaps
because there was in my last marriage.
Yes, in your life. I think you go on to qualify it. I'm sorry, I perhaps should have said that. You do qualify it, that's quite true.
Yes. Gee, I wrote the book 6 years ago. What was the question?
Well,
no security.
Yes, you say that your life has been a search for security.
Well, I think that combines an emotional security. Of course, we all want financial security, but I think emotional security is almost even more necessary. When you have that, I think you have everything, and you can find everything else.
Who do you think has been luckier in life? The audiences who have had the tremendous pleasure of watching all your splendid performances, or yourself for being given the gift to give this talent to people? Who's the luckier?
I am. Because they write to me, and through the years, I write about 10,000 or 12,000 letters a month to my friends. I never call them fans. And what they get out of my performances, whether I play, shall I say which? It begins with a B. Or whether I play a heroine, or whether I play a mother, or whether I play whatever it is. What they get out of it is so fantastic. And when you realize throughout the world that you reach this many people, and that they feel a friendship for you, and they write year after year after year, then I feel I'm the lucky one to have found this many friends.
Having made the number of films that you have, I've often thought of this, that it's more than likely, perhaps at this very moment, somewhere in the world, one of your movies is playing, of all the stars, I think you have reached this stage of almost celluloid immortality, that one could say that 20 years, 30 years from now, somewhere in the world, a Joan Crawford movie will be playing.
On the moon, maybe?
Maybe even on the moon, or on the flight to the moon. Fly to the moon and see a Joan Crawford movie. Does this ever make you feel sort of slightly spooky, the thought that something that you did all those years ago, and perhaps only had 10 minutes to capture, is being viewed and viewed and viewed again and again and again by countless millions of people?
No. I'd much rather see somebody else's movie and try and prepare for my next one. I never live in the past. I never think about those things. I never reflect on them. I would much rather read a good book or see some of your television shows here. I'm sorry you only have two. Two stations that I can get things on, and I keep changing them every night. But it's wonderful.
There must be something, though, surely in life that you either regretted not doing, or some chance that you passed up. You say you don't live in the past, yet surely that there are times when everybody faces their past and thinks, oh dear, if only I'd have done that, or if only things had been different.
No, I'm sorry. I'm living right for now for your questions, and I must answer you truthfully. I will never even look back to what I did yesterday.
That's wonderful.
I'm preparing right now for when I get home and to pack to go to the States for Christmas for my children.
Well, how far ahead do you live in the future? I mean, I have this thing where I permit myself, for instance, to get excited about something that will happen, say, next week. But I tend not to get too excited or worried about things that are going to happen next month, for instance. So I guess I live a sort of 7-day hop away. Are you like this?
I love that 7-day hop away. I am booked through between my career professionally in the big picture business and my other career through till September of '67. A friend of mine once said, I kept saying, oh, golly, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and then I go here, and then I go there, then I have to pack for here, then I unpack, and I come back to New York. She said, don't do it till you get to it. And you know something? I don't worry about it anymore. I don't go to the next city until I get there.
Mm. And yet, isn't this strange, that you're like this in life, in real life, and yet with your parts, with the playing of your parts, obviously you go into the most fantastic preparation. You foresee every eventuality, every possibility that could conceivably happen.
Oh, I prepare for the packing months in advance here.
Yes.
I worked all day until I came here today with the new producer and new director for the next picture in Spain. We've completed Circus of Blood, so that's finished. But now I'm preparing, and all the time I'm flying and packing. I'm thinking about the next character. And by the time I get to it, I'll be ready. I hope.
A great loss, it seems to me, is that today there aren't the... I was going to say heavies, but it really isn't the right word. But there certainly aren't the kind of relaxed artists like Melvyn Douglas who can play drama and who are great in comedy.
Oh, tremendous in comedy. Yeah.
Why do you think it can be that today this kind of playing is so much out of vogue, and there isn't that kind of actor around anyway?
Well, you can find one that can play comedy and one who can play drama, you know. Or very rarely can they play both, as you say. But I think Melvyn, being born on the stage, as I was in front of movies, he has that technique both for camera and both for theater, and probably doing repertory, where they had to play something else every night, which is so terribly important, and know all the plays. Sometimes I think they did as much as 5 plays a week, and alternated on weekends and matinees, for a comedy during the afternoon and a drama at the night.
Can I ask you about John Barrymore, who I think personally is one of the greatest actors ever? I've seen most of his films, and I go to his work like I go to yours. He constantly has surprises in store, even when you've seen him act in a role 10 times. Did you only make... How many movies did you make? Because the one I remember particularly is Grand Hotel. Just the one, was it? Tell me something about him, because he's a fascinating man.
He was like this then. He couldn't have cared less. And I'm so sorry because being married to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who imitated him quite often in his performances and in life, he did great imitations of him. I had heard so much about him and when I met him, I was, as you say, in awe of him, and I wanted so to be friends with him. But he was rather cross most of the time in those days, and making with the faces and everything. So I offered him a Kleenex one day because his nose was always running, and he said thank you and dropped it like that. And I thought he was very unkind, but what a talent. He was just wonderful.
I've heard it said, one actress told me that people didn't like playing love scenes with him too close for too long because he hated taking a bath. Is this true, or is this just one of those weird stories that gets passed down? That he was remarkably lazy about his appearance and about his sort of shaving and washing and all sorts of things, that he could arrive on the set looking an absolute wreck.
Well, I wore cologne, and I smelt me only, so I don't know.
Can I ask you also, in Grand Hotel, particularly the scene that you play with him on the, as it were, on the balcony overlooking this amazing sort of basin, this hotel which is built around the hollow. The scene there where you play the stenographer, this young girl who's been invited to this very classy hotel, and Barrymore is, as we say these days, chatting you up, giving you the full Barrymore bit. Did you feel that you were being exploited by him, or rather by the director? What I'm trying to say is, he almost steals the scene, but not quite, in a curious sort of way. I get the impression, for instance, that he's doing his best to upstage you slightly in the scene.
Oh, always.
Was
but I had a low neck dress on. I fixed him. No, he was famous for upstaging in the theater and in pictures. I must say he was fascinating, though. Of course, working with Lionel Barrymore was one of the great joys of my life, both in Grand Hotel and in The Gorgeous Hussy. And by the time we did Gorgeous Hussy, Mr. Lionel Barrymore was definitely in the wheelchair.
Yes.
We had to use that and do the performance around that. But so grumpy and so dear, you just walked up and wanted to hug him every minute, he was so darling. He didn't have the kind of romantic image that John Barrymore had. And of course they were both before my time. I know a lot of people think that very few things were before my time, particularly in England where they're so age conscious, but they were before my time, and I learned about them through Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who had grown up with that whole group. And I mean, as a child he grew up with those people being famous, but Lionel was a complete opposite of Jack Barrymore. He was gentle and kind and gruff in the later years, of course, because he was so ill with arthritis, but just darling to me. I loved him very much.
What is the nature of your tremendous sympathy and empathy with George Cukor? I mean, I know he directed most of your...
I worship this man.
Yes.
There's no greater talent in the world. I worship him.
How are you so certain about him, and yet you've worked with so many other directors? I would agree with you, but it just seems strange that you're so positive that he had something that no other director had. What was the cause?
He has the magic of a director as Clark Gable had it as an actor. To me, Cukor can do no wrong. He makes you have a sense of humor about yourself, which I never had until I worked with Cukor. He'll say, and what the hell are you trying to do? You made a mistake and you're not allowed to make one. And you say, so I goofed, I'm sorry. And if you don't have a sense of humor about yourself, Cukor will come up when he knows how sensitive you are, which he knew knows I am, and was particularly during the early days, and Woman's Face, and Susan and God, my first big comedy.
Yes.
He'd come up to me and whisper quietly to me. But when he knew I needed something like that, like a slap in the face, he'd bawl me out in front of the whole cast and crew. And he saw once it didn't work, because I burst into tears and left the set. And once in a while I got so angry with him, I said, all right, I'll fix you. I'll do it just the way you want. And I got exactly what he wanted on the next scene. He knows what he's doing every minute. They say he's a great woman's director. I don't agree with that in essence of being just a woman's director. In Philadelphia Story, I think Jimmy Stewart got the award, didn't he?
Yes.
Well, and he's directed Cary Grant. He's directed quite a few great men stars, and they've always gotten awards or nominations.
Everybody has, a lot of people have commented on the way you handle people like Louis B. Mayer. You must have had to have had tremendous tact in those days, a great knowledge of other people's personalities and the way people worked and their approach and everything.
L.B. Mayer was like my father. All I know is that in later years, Judy Garland grew up there, and Lana Turner right after me, and Rosalind Russell at the same time. There wasn't one of us that could go to Louis B. Mayer's office with a problem, and I never went unless I had a problem, so I didn't bother him. That we weren't put straight in his office. If he was in the boardroom or vice versa, on his office, we were taken to the boardroom. There was not one time that this man ever turned any of us down to listen to a problem. And he took care of it, what's more. He followed through. He was absolutely fantastic. Don't you believe those books written about him?
No. This to me is part of the whole thing of the 30s. This is why, I enjoy the 30s films so very much, that it seemed to me that although filmmaking might have been conveyor belted, although there's some truth in the charge that artists were manufactured and that artists... I don't believe this, and
you
you obviously
manufacture
don't.
toys, you don't manufacture stars.
Mm.
You can't turn them out. There were... nowadays, you see them, they're all out of the same cookie cutter, you know.
Right. What has gone so wrong, really? I feel it has gone wrong. Why?
They allowed us to be individuals. We don't all have to be blonde with long hair. We don't all have to be plump. We don't all have to be exotic.
Mm.
If you're thin, you're thin. Like Katharine Hepburn, I think it was Cukor, who said so. She has a big jaw, exaggerated. Adrian said about my shoulders, she has big shoulders, exaggerated. Shoulder pads came into being.
Mm.
Let us be what we are.
Why then does there have to be this constant interference these days, not just from the directors and producers, but it seems to me now that films are made at almost a sort of committee level. There are so many vested interests, there's such a lot of money to be made or lost, and there are so many people who want to have their little bit, who want to have their little say. It seems to me that this is a sort of diluting process.
So much money to be made or lost, you just said. So much talent to be made or lost too.
How do you yourself, do you find yourself rebelling against the system now, or can you go along with it?
I go along with it because I have other activities. I do what I want to do in the way of films, and that's it.
I find myself, I get a tremendous nostalgia about stars and directors who I've never even met and never will meet. For you, having worked through this period, having been so close to the 30s and knowing so many people as you obviously do, don't you ever feel sometimes a sadness? I know I do, watching it, and I think, you know, my God, these days are never ever going to come again. And for you it must be worse. You must sometimes feel desperately sad, don't you? Well, you've got a resilience. How are you so resilient when you were so much a part of that tremendous 30s system, the whole movie-making industry, talk is still
I
only
feel
5
sad
years
for the
old.
industry that they're not training stars today
Yeah.
for the future. That's the only sad thing I feel, is for the industry itself.
Do you think
They'll always be able to make epics and, and things like that. But the individual stories and the personalized stories, they'll have to come back to it. But I think television is devouring most of our story plots, as you full well know.
Yes. One last question. Is there a part or anything in real life that you desperately want to really achieve, that you want to create as soon as you possibly can? Do you still have a tremendous burning ambition to do one particular thing?
I have a burning ambition to keep making films and to make each one good and the next one better and better and better, and whatever the part is, if I choose it, it will be what I need to have at that time.
Miss Crawford, thank you very much indeed for talking.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, same to you.
This video is brought to you by The Concluding Chapter of Crawford, a comprehensive research guide to Joan Crawford. www.theconcludingchapterofcrawford.com. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.